You're listening to Tune Dig, a conversation between two lifelong friends about the power of music, one album at a time. I'm Cliff Seal.
And I'm Kyle Stapleton. Each episode, we talk about a single album in depth, unpacking it through conversation to understand what makes it worth appreciating and learning a little bit about life along the way.
If you're listening for the first time because we're covering an artist or a record you love, we promise you'll learn something new or gain a new perspective by the end of the episode.
And if you've stuck with us for multiple episodes, you know by now that you're bound to expand your horizons as we share clear entry points for artists you may never have tried to get into before.
Today we're talking about LP1 from FKA Twigs.
Wow, Cliff. Just wow. We had one last month where I was kind of not sure, but I'm back to being real sure. I love music again.
Just starting with an exasperated, oh wow, Cliff. This could go anywhere. Okay, what's this about? No, it's about the music. That's good.
Oh wow, parentheses, complimentary.
Which is, in a sense, a little surprising considering if you're doing a big genre map, this one's not too far away from the last episode.
Yeah, that's fair. Also geographically not far.
Yes. Yes. That country little. I forget about it a lot of the time because they have big energy and attitudes. Little tiny imperialist space. There's a loud reference. But I'm glad to hear it. I got a little worried that I wasn't going to feel the way you felt. And then I found some interesting ways to relate to this that I'm not sure I really expected. But it's the type of thing that comes along with trying to get better at receiving music, which I continue to feel like we make each other better at. And I'm increasingly convinced this is a very cool skill right now.
I agree. And the calendar is a good tool in our practice, continues to be, because I did the thing that I think I remember you saying about R.D. Berman, or I don't remember who it was, just the like, why did we pick this one again? And then immediately getting into it and being like, oh yeah, because it's great.
Yep.
This record came out in 2014. Was it August 2014? Which is like, we've talked about the early 2000s with NERD and the sort of lost media era of Internet 1.0. But even more strangely, in one man's opinion, this like immediately pre-Trump era. So like people have been using 2016 as sort of a cultural inflection point for a while now.
Yep.
But the sort of 2012 to 2016 is such a weird cultural transition time that I think already feels lost in space.
Totally.
In a lot of ways.
Totally.
And this is the same way that Exit Planet Dust was like a perfect, here's 1995 peak white boy culture, whatever. If you wanted to describe 2014 in this timeline to someone, this is the ultimate artifact. And it also works because it's a transcendent piece of art. Its influence on recent stuff is obvious, which is crazy in such a like diffuse fractalized culture. But you're like, oh, there's lots of other shit already that sounds like this, that is in the lineage of this. And it's on like best of the decade list, which I can't believe they've already been doing that for the 2010s. You know, like things are moving so fast. Why are we even trying to bother cataloging things in that manner?
Because we had a lot of time in exactly 2020 and went,
that's true.
What should I think about now?
That's a good point.
How about all the time before this moment that can never be reversed?
I've thought about that as a person who is like pretty meticulously cataloged the music that has defined his year each year.
Yes.
It's like, what if I pulled back, what would the 100 songs now from 2000 to 2010 or 2010 to 2020 look like for me? And it probably wouldn't have been the stuff that I put at the top of the list initially. Like stuff is slow burned and grown on me. And I've been thinking about doing that as a reflective exercise, but haven't done it. And maybe this will kind of spur me on. I struggled to remember how Twigs even came into my view in the first place, because I loved this record when it came out. And I had kind of forgotten about it, but not her, because she has remained a fixture. But like my appreciation has deepened. I think it was Skylar Kroom from He Is Legend posted on the internet either a link to the video for 2 weeks or just the album cover, which is so incredibly striking and does great justice to the sounds within. But it was one of those like, I don't know, is this up his alley? What is this thing going to be? And I remember being like, holy shit. And then our buddy Colin and I will never forget as long as I live. A lot of shows kind of come and go in the mind, but we went and saw her first Atlanta show. I think her first Atlanta show at Terminal West, one of her early ones for sure. And it was the horniest atmosphere I've ever been in my life. Bordering on eyes wide shut energy from the audience. She was incredible. She was completely captivating. I remember 4 or 5 spotlights in sort of an arc coming down on around her as like a white rainbow shaped thing. I remember we were right in front of the soundboard, and I distinctly remember like being so struck by her aura that I like pulled my phone out and took a picture. I remember taking that picture, and then that took me out of the moment a little. It made me look at all the other people in the crowd and was like, oh my God, these people are about to get it on. So in ephemeral times, FKA Twigs is a very embodied artist. I think that's the word that kept coming to mind. It's like, there's so much about the physical body, which clearly others feel the same way.
For totally different reasons, the body, the larger sense of the body, ended up being my connection to this artist in a broader sense that helped me sort of peel back a little bit of the music here. What's fun is you mentioned things being up alleys. I think this is good. I enjoyed it, but none of this is up my alley.
Yeah, not a casual Cliff headphone listen.
No, and the more that you know me, the more this is all about to be incredibly self-evident. Twigs is an artist that has become famous for control of her body and using it artistically, first in dance form and then in other forms of precise artistic expression.
Mm-hmm.
I have come to a place where I can appreciate what my body can do, but I have not felt like, what is inside of me is dance. and it must get out. My body must move in this way, and you are actually going to receive art. After I move my body and you watch me, you're going to go, fucking art, baby. It's absolute cinema, right? None of that's ever come close to me.
Yeah, I've never watched you dance and been more happy to be alive.
Yeah.
And vice versa, I'm sure.
But but not to take the sharpest turn into seriousness, but connecting actually with the thought of what makes the body come alive and what makes you feel connected to it. There are a couple of things about Twigs that made me feel like I could understand what she was putting out more specifically. So in 2017, she had surgery to remove some fibroid tumors. And that sucks no matter who you are, right? And that's not awesome in any way. But she, at that time, talked at least a lot or enough in interviews about how that was impacting her and how she was sort of moving through it. And there was this tenacity that she approached all of this with. And she talked about how one quote that stuck with me is she described her experience as living with a fruit bowl of pain every day. And I pretty recently had I'll explain this a bit, but I had a little touch of, oh no, do I have chronic pain recently? And that you can really read and learn a lot about what's fun between your brain and your body and what happens when something like a fruit bowl of pain begins to occur every day. And the way that your brain starts to basically tell you, not only can you not do what you did before, but you're in danger if you try it. things are bad and wrong, and the body like circles the wagons and gets really, really, really serious about stuff when it thinks it's in danger. And if you're not careful over time, like a lot of chronic pain comes from your brain just getting used to a signal and it no longer meaning the right thing. And so her tenacity of I'm going to push harder. She got to where she was spending something like 6 hours a day moving her body every day through fitness or whatever else. But like for me, I identify with that method. The sort of all or nothing pendulum of the thing. If something pushes me too far in the direction of like, hey bud, just heads up, you're staring into the void now. You're looking straight at it. Heads up. There's something in me that like activates like a spring and it's like, I will actually repel that. I'm like a magnet that gets turned around. And it's like, I would actually like to attack this entire thing. And I'm going to tell my brain what to think. And I'm going to train my body on how it should feel. And that, so for me, you know, I may have shared this before or whatever, but like I had what could have been life-ending scoliosis as a kid. And I had a surgery that for a lot of people, that surgery, first of all, prevented a lifetime of basically chronic pain. And I was told I probably wouldn't live, actually, which is pretty wild. A lot of people don't know scoliosis can do the death. It can make you graveyard dead, which is cool. Death. Yeah.
By the way, such a known thing about you when you were younger that your senior shirt said C-Rod.
Yeah. Well, I was a 15-year-old idiot at the time, but I see the energy from that moment and then what recurred and got better as I got older. But like, even then there was a sense of like, I'm not just going to prevent being in pain. I think I want to make sure that I use this body. I think I would rather look at it as like, my back is full of titanium. What can I do that you couldn't do? And like, you know, there were a few rules to the whole thing. The surgeon was like, for real, if you play football or hockey, I will harm you. Like, do not do this. And which as a 5'9", 150, 60 pound dude at the time, it was pretty easy to go. No worries, Pop. No one wants me.
You can still do the heated rivalry part, just not the hockey part.
Yeah. Yeah. But just that whole, and like, a lot of this has come up for me lately because I was telling somebody about it recently, but like that connection of tenacity to the body gave me, like, I was already listening to this album and had enough to say or talk about. And then it really opened up another level. Like, actually, while I don't ever still want to dance, what I do understand is energetically, I refuse to be told that my body is supposed to be small or broken. And while I'll accept reality, I will also push back against that as hard as I possibly can. And I will like maintain control as much as possible of my body and what it can do and whether it can do what I want it to do for as long as possible. And like, maybe that sounds like a lot of layer to put on top of just kind of a cool experimental R&B and hip hop album. Cause like the lyrics aren't embodying all of this depth, but learning more about this person and then reapplying it to what we see here in her first record and understanding more of where she came from and or what her story was. It, once again, right, helped me just see a bunch of things differently, appreciate an artist in a totally new way, and take on artistic expression in a way like I would never have expected any of the shit I just said to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I also was sitting here thinking, as you were talking, has this idea of the physical body as a vessel for music come up with any of the artists that we've talked about before? And I don't think that it has. We've talked about the voice being an instrument, and that's certainly an aspect of things here, but it's not just the voice. It's not just the throat chakra up. It's the whole physical body as a vessel for the art. We've talked about the music, this third thing that has a physicality to it, but obviously it has to come from, be made by, produced by a physical body. And that's not a thing that's really been a thing for us. I don't know that we've had a reason to really think about it. And certainly things like dance, neither of us are really going to like dance performances thinking about ballet or theater. We both have our own relationship to classical music, but it's not really like a central. A lot about Twigs' world is a very different world than ours.
All that shit is cool, by the way. We're not going to do the Chalamet thing.
For sure.
But not our vibe.
I mean, my dance story is like I was pretty like, I don't get it as a lifestyle. And then I worked at the Rialto Theater in grad school, where you and I got to see some cool, incredible artists for free, like McCoy Tyner and Basaku Kuyate and Ravi Shankar's daughter, Anushka, and all sorts of amazing stuff over the years. I mean, very little was as formative as a palette expander as that was the 2 years that I worked there. But one of the big things that the executive director, Leslie Gordon, did was really expand and elevate the dance offerings. And having to be she co-produced a big festival called Off the Edge. There was a bunch of different types of dance, Trey McIntyre, Balethnic, all sorts of different groups. And it was Trey McIntyre choreographing a dance to Aretha McIntyre's I've Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, where it was like a mode of expressing that didn't make sense to me, put with a mode of expressing that really did. And it was like, oh shit, I get it now. I just needed somebody to put it on my level for me to get it. And so now I can watch dance and be like, I see what they're trying to do. Finally, after all these years. So I have Leslie Gordon to thank, probably for being able to appreciate Twigs on the level that I do, because I hear it now, and I put on this record and I immediately envision a big stage, and I envision a human body with a face or otherwise moving to it. It feels like a body moving in a space. And I was really interested trying to listen back through for the first time without that visual in mind. Like a person with no frame of reference, what would they do with this? The same way you and I were talking about Nirvana, the band, the show, the movie right before this. And it's like, it's clear there's an insider language on that. And if you're somebody like me who had no familiarity going into that movie, does it still work? I feel like on LP1, it absolutely does. It's impossible to set aside my bias, but there's something so arresting. There's certainly a like, holy shit, this doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard factor. And the dynamics are so big that you're like, well, I'm going to stick around for whatever this is for just a minute. And Prelude starts it in a crazy way, right? It's subtle, and then it's really, really gripping. It's very filmic. It's just a beautifully designed thing, start to finish. And to know that Twigs is a dancer and a really well-honed performer at this point, you're like, well, how does this debut album sound like nothing else I've ever heard? And there's only like 6, 8 tracks from the 2 EPs before that. I think the thesis, the big like thesis statement coming out of this for me is kind of like when we did Dolly Parton, was like, however seriously we're taking this artist, it's not serious enough yet. I am walking away after a few weeks of deep study of everything Twigs did on this record and has been doing since then, as like, maybe, hopefully, with any luck, if she can break through the fragmentation of no monoculture like previous generations had, maybe one day we'll talk about her like we talk about Prince. Maybe.
I can't say that the trajectory that she has been on artistically since this record is once again up any alleys that I have.
Sure.
But this provides a foundation of appreciation for all of those things, like in a meaningfully good way, and gives me enough to work with as source material, and including the EPs before that, to where I definitely found I guess, to adopt your hopeful viewpoint, just like maybe Prince had eras of records that folks might like more than others. I would sort of already have mine here, which is going to continually be parallel to my feeling of unease about how she displays herself on a regular basis, which is, again, to be very clear, not a judgment in any way, but more a like, this was a weird one to turn Spotify to video mode for, to be honest with you. It didn't take long before I was just like,
does Spotify have incognito mode?
The panopticon is doing the not sure if eyes at me right now. And I could still appreciate all of the art that was involved in it, but extracting, making the visual discrete as part of the art from the music immediately unlocked the rest of it for me. Like, okay, I don't dig this video, but I also am not a person who would be so good with my body that I'm probably prepared to choreograph an entire thing, because we've sort of hinted at this, but like she was like prolific as a background dancer, like commanding twice as much money as other people, highly sought after, to the degree that, maybe we'll talk about this more, but like Video Girl is about how the whole world knows her as a dancer from, I think it was the Kylie Minogue video that she did.
I think it was the Jessie J.
You're right.
Video.
Thank you. Thank you. She did dance for Kylie Minogue, but yeah, I was trying to think of the right song. And, that so much of this record then becomes speaking of like magnets turning the other way. I don't know who I am yet, but I'm not that person from the video.
Right.
Which, if I can go to a fun meta place here with how she approaches art. Yes, you are though. Yes, you are still that person, right? Like, the way she speaks about her artistry is very Boolean seeming. Like, I turned this off and I turned this on, and I don't know who I'm becoming, but I know that I'm not this anymore. In a journey sense, sure, that makes sense. In a larger sense, though, it's interesting to think of yourself that way and compartmentalize and think about even like a thing that comes to mind for me on this is when she explained her name. So, like, her artist name was Twigs, and then there was lawyer involved, and then she couldn't be Twigs anymore. So, FKA Twigs is a cool nod. That makes sense. Mm-hmm. But she's quoted as saying, like...
Also very Exit Planet Dust.
Right. Okay. Yes, exactly. But she adds this little bit, which is... she says... It's just a collection of letters. I just wanted a selection of letters that sounded quite kind of masculine and strong. FKA just worked. It doesn't stand for anything. It's just capital letters. Listen to me. It does stand for something. You can't do that. You can't adopt an acronym that makes sense in context and be like, but no, not that. But like, that's sort of how she approaches the thing. Like, all assumptions are empty passes so far. Absolutely anything and everything is on the table for her to work with. And like, while my brain doesn't work that way, once I saw it from that perspective, I could appreciate the music more, actually. I sort of got more aspects of what's being done in the production here and what are in some of these songs and why it changes so much if you listen to it in certain ways. All right, I accept your brain as is. And that's been like a really fun exercise, right? To find that I can identify with somebody who, like, physiologically is so different from me.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of stop trying to surf and just surf. She's extremely vulnerable in interview. She talks about the truth, but she's also very private. And she does a really good job of the second it gets to be the wrong vibe. She's very in control of her body and the area around her body in a really beautiful way. Like the power of a great artist is to sort of affect the atmosphere around you and get things pointing toward a certain color of the light spectrum for a minute. And she has an almost supernatural ability to do that in my estimation. And there's very, like, if you watch interviews with her, there's some like little turn on a dime moments where she'll get it back to like, no, actually I'm thinking about it in this way. And I think that subtlety is just a beautiful part of who she is as an artist, and it's very dialed in. I also appreciate that her name Twigs ties back to the body thing, because it's the sound, it's in reference to the sound of her bones cracking when she'd be warming up to dance.
I laughed out loud when I read that for the first time.
I mean, that had to be something that you related to.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Like, oh my God, holy shit. And she had to have gotten that name quite young, younger than you associate cracking bones with. But I've always had knees like that. My long ass chicken legs, my knees have always done that, like warming up in football as a kid. So I feel her on that. There is something to be said for, her maybe being a vessel for this type of stuff, in addition to being a background dancer who commanded the attention and whatever that she did. Her first like brush with fame, I guess, as an artist in her own right, was she was coming home from the club. She'd been out all night at the club and was waiting for the tube at 6 a.m. and apparently looked so ethereal and goddess-like, just like sitting waiting for the train, that some photographer was like, hey, I'd like to take your picture sometime. And those pictures turned out so good, they put them on the cover of ID magazine for a special issue on London nightlife. And that was before she had any music out in 2012. And there's a great follow-up ID artist on artist interview that she did with Playboy Cardi, of all the fucking people, where she talked about that sort of phenomenon. Like, she didn't put music out till even the following year, but there's a sort of, when like a destined thing. I thought about Grace Jones in that regard, of the like, well, I don't know what you're going to do yet, but looking the way you look, you got to do something. Like, there's only one of you, and we need it. We need whatever is in you to transmit things from the cosmos to us. I get a bit of that sense from stories like that.
I remember quipping during that episode that no one's ever looked at me and thought, you look so interesting. What is it that you have to say? And like, once again, yep, a similar delta here.
But you put together some of her first person quotes. And what struck me is that so many of those were about the slings and arrows that come with looking really unique.
Yeah.
One of the many white male privileges is just being able to blend in and not have people like constantly projecting shit onto you. I mean, at worst, it's like, I don't want to talk to him. He looks fucking annoying. He looks like he wants to talk to me for a long time about something. It's probably the worst that it gets. That, or like, if you're in the parking lot at the same time as a woman, then being like, he's going to kill me. Those are the two things. And they're both deserved, honestly. But to have things that you don't deserve heaped on you constantly because of the way that you look, that is a psychologically tough existence. It makes it hard to be in your body. So I commend her strength, which has in a lot of ways come from art.
Totally. And for a small comedic relief valve, we will not, over the course of the rest of this conversation, completely deify her, because while I try not to judge people on their dating records, Robert Pattinson, Shia LaBeouf, and Matt Healy is one of the worst lineups I've ever heard. So, so there's a little bit of, okay, we're still growing. That's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's about as much as I want to say about all that, because it led to some really rough shit in her life.
Yeah. No, yeah, totally. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the perfect summation of everything that we just said about white boys.
Yes.
God almighty. That is quite the lineup. What is even your F, Marry, kill of those three?
I still think, though, that even that joke, I would hope that if I dated those three men, podcasts would also make clips about me and laugh. That is done with an appropriate amount of respect and lightheartedness, because once again, there's a thing that's very different about you that until I leaned a little bit harder into what this artist is doing would have just felt like distance. And now it feels like I got a decent little memory palace going on the inside of your brain, maybe.
Yeah.
Like you've shared enough of this to where I see where this corner comes into play and I can appreciate it and lean into it a little bit more.
Man, I'll tell you what it is for me of like the 2010s and 2020s hunt for new stuff that keeps me interested. I think a lot of what I've reached for, even though the past like 15 or so years has really pushed my palette out, I reach for a lot of stuff that is going to like feel good. It's more feely than thinky. I'm always going to find great new hardcore bands. I'm always going to find a cool new jazz artist. I'm always going to find somebody doing some free nationals, like highly compressed drums, funky shit, Tame Impala-y, Thundercat-y type of stuff. Like you can find your 6 or 8 archetypes of the new version of shit you already like. But Twigs operates in this corner for me of like, I don't know what I want to watch. Let me go back to my Letterboxd wish list. Björk did it for a long time. It's like, I don't want to regularly listen to it, but it will reset everything in my brain, right? It just straight, it's like getting your car detailed. It just completely refreshes everything and makes me look at everything a little bit differently. I think that's kind of where I've landed on all of it. It's not some shit I can just like cruise around listening to, but when I do listen to it, I want to listen to it full blast, Charles Mingus loud, and just be like, wow, damn, I spent a full day at the art gallery. I can't believe what the human spirit is capable of.
I'm so glad you said that. I didn't know if that would make sense. And you just explained the thing I was mentally trying to ramp up to. Yes, Mingus is a great example. There is a tremendous difference in experience listening to this record in different formats.
Very much so.
Insane.
Very much so.
Wow. And we've lightheartedly made our musical elitist statements a little bit before, but this is like Mingus, a tube in your amplification line while listening to this record changes it fundamentally.
Yep.
And to the point that you just made too, I expected this to sit more closely to cloud rap adjacent backgrounding type music.
Yep.
And it doesn't work that way.
It really doesn't.
And I would have thought
it's a movie you cannot watch on your laptop or your phone type thing.
It's almost like No Country for Old Men or something. Like it's got this like, no, you must give this a certain amount of focus or it's going to kind of like exhaust out the window and you're going to lose it. And like once I sat down the right day with the right mentality,
it's so strange. It's really thin when you listen to it on small stuff.
Yes.
Like I was painting a room the other day and had it on one of those little cylinder Bluetooth speakers, and it sounded like shit. And I was like, I listened to this 48 hours ago, and it was the best sounding record I've ever heard in my life. And I was so disappointed that I went to the other room and I got AirPods and put them in because like I just have to hear it the right way.
Yep. AirPods will do it. They'll bring out an interesting aspect of it. Some other tube stuff will bring out other different aspects of it. But yes, it without the right amount of volume and amplification, replication, it sounds empty.
Yeah.
And to your point about space, what's really weird about that, though, is it always has a spatial quality, even when it doesn't sound good because of what you're listening to it on.
Yeah.
But then when you, the first time I went, all right, it's time to just like shut the fuck up mentally and listen to this record, I was truly and deeply blown away. Immediately, too. The preface immediately recalled in this was not the cold listening experience, but almost to your point, the hard reset listening experience. All of a sudden, two things get brought out in a non-track that kicks it off to begin with. One is, this is spiritually related to Deloused in the Comatorium.
Wow.
Oh, okay. So there's layers, and you don't really care if I hear all the layers or not. You just put them there, and then I get to go find them later. And then when I discover them, this will feel like a room. And like, well, so that plus this, honestly, this pairing works a little bit anyway. A little bit of Deloused in the Comatorium, and then it immediately, you've already mentioned it a bit, but like, oh, this is homogenic. Oh,
yeah. Preface and Hunter remind me a lot of each other.
Yeah.
They open on similar vibey notes.
Yes. So like from there on out, once again, more or less have notes on sort of every track about things that stood out. But that mind frame, if that's the right word for it, unlocked a lot of stuff about this record in a way I wouldn't have known that it would. And I mentioned to you, it was a bit like, speaking of, hello, Brendan, that makes all of our podcast sound amazing. I was in Brendan's house one day and we listened to Over the Hills and Far Away on monitors that he had after he had run a process that had detected the size of the room in the speakers and then created a reflective equalization of how the sound should come out from there, and then played the thing. It was like you could hear fingers on the faders of the producer in the studio, in the house that I knew that they were recording in. Like, it was like someone gave your ears acid, and you could just like, no, I perceive the texture of their fingerprint now.
Yeah.
And
I remember the first time that happened to me. I was at Brian Steely's house, and he had just invested in a crazy system, and we listened to Muddy Waters, the folk singer.
Oh, yeah.
And I was looking at the picture of Muddy in the live room of the studio on the dust jacket, and I swear to God, it was like he was sitting right next to me in the room playing on his acoustic guitar, and it fucking freaked me out so bad. It was a 4D music experience, and I was not ready for it at all. But you do get that level of clarity on this record. I'm still kind of messed up over the Deloused comparison that never would have occurred to me. So one, I would die for Twigs and Omar to work together on something that would
especially now.
Yeah. Now that they're in their like full Latin jazz bag.
Yes.
They would do something really sick together. But yeah, the atmospherics of like a Televators or something is very spiritually akin, or the first and last parts of Cygnus on Francis the Mute, very spiritually akin. I mean, there's a whole punk aspect to Twigs that she never gets enough credit for. People talk about X-Ray Specs and her well-documented love of polystyrene, and that's all good and well, but she was also in a punk band herself in London called Delirium Tremens, which is a great beer and an even better band. Like I was like, oh, that's a fucking great band name. You know, like we're going to go to the Earl tonight and see Delirium Tremens. Are you kidding me? Delirium Tremens and the Coat Hangers. Like, oh, I'm so cool. I'm so alive right now in my body. I love it, man. I love it.
And that delights me. Sorry, that reference alone, that was the first beer I ever had. Everyone has one of these beers in their life. You drink your cheap beer growing up, and then one day someone hands you a beer, and you drink it like the normal beer. But there's two beers in there. There's 2 or 3 beers in there. And by the time you're done with it, especially for me, it's like, I think I'm out for the day. I'm done. Yeah. I think I'm done.
Quite literally the elephant in the beer on that one. They used to sell, mine was Victory Golden Monkey, which they used to sell. They used to sell pint drafts of at Sidebar right around the corner from where I took classes in college. And a couple of friends and I had a break between classes, and we would go have a buffalo chicken panini, and Victory Golden Monkey. And I'd have 2 of those things and I'd be drunk as hell in that class, just like struggling to hold it together. So yeah, I remember those days well.
What a time. One thing that stood out to me that was interesting, going back to your kind of putting your finger on the like 2010 through 2020 time frame. All right. So in a totally discrete thought process from you sharing it today, right? I had this like, what feels weird about this cosmically, time-wise? Why does it feel odd to me? And then I kept reading retrospectives and reviews of it, and people would say things like the Spin review said, this is unconventional stuff, drug-like, elemental, extraterrestrial. Like LP1 sounds like nothing else in the world right now. So I, in a sense, could understand what that would still mean today. In the sense that I think that they meant it then, it sounds insane. Everything sounds like this now.
Yeah.
And the thought that 12-ish years ago, this would have dropped and people would be saying that it was so unusual and so unlike what anyone else was doing at the time is, to Twigs' credit, awesome. But like thinking about it now, it's like, how do I account for the amount that music shifted towards whatever this is? Because it didn't take too many listens for me to go, this is why I like SZA. SOS to me is another very spatial sounding record that's done in part by occasionally taking the production almost all the way back to silence.
Yeah.
And then going back to full blast, and then and being willing to play with dynamics in a way that almost sort of breaks the continuity of the record as a pure listen to through. But in the moment, probably Pendulum and Video Girl are the best examples of this, where they're back and then they're forward and it's loud and it's quiet and then it comes back and now it's distorted. And it's like there are these little overly dynamic things that most artists smooth over that then through any amount of different genres of hip hop progressing over the last decade, like those have just become commonplace ways of doing things in particular pockets, right? It's not that all music sounds like this, but I can tell you 5 to 10 people probably off the top of my head where like, if you like this sort of, okay, it's lo-fi, but it's involved and it's a little complicated, but not complex. Like, yeah, man, there is a lot of music for you right now. That it like the bedroom and COVID revolution of making music has brought us much closer to all of that. Which that's not to say it's negative. In many ways, there's been a lot of cool stuff that's come out of it. But wow, that stood out to me as a surprise in how people talked about it then, and just trying to rationalize like how much did this impact things? Did this reverberate in bigger ways than I expected? And or was she like riding a wave here that we didn't know? Maybe this is the same wave that A$AP Rocky was riding in America and it's the same thing. I don't know.
No, I was all over this. So Elliot and I, when we had the Good Old Boys blog, we were early to this party. Like
Tumblr, baby.
That's right.
Hell yeah.
2010, 2011 to 2015-ish. Sure, she eventually got lumped in with what was called the alternative R&B movement with like Kalela, who Elliot and I put something in the pre-cut for me SoundCloud stuff of Kalela's on one of our mixtapes. Banks was in there, How to Dress Well, who Elliot loved, Sampa, who produced a bit on this record. But that was I would argue, it seems like Twigs would argue, was a bit of a racialized umbrella descriptor for a bunch of artists who couldn't otherwise be categorized. So on that bit, she wasn't part of a movement, and they tried to put her in one, and she told The Guardian, fuck alternative R&B. She insisted that her music has more in common with punk than the neo-generic term applied to any 2010s R&B related music that indie publications feel comfortable writing about. I think we talked about with NERD that there was still like a racial undercurrent to the, this is for these type of people and this is for these type of people. And then the blog era started to obliterate all that. And 2014 is like squarely in the place where we were getting to kind of post-blog, post-internet culture mashing, deregionalization. So there's still some uneasy politics that go around all of that. So Twigs said, when I first released music and no one knew what I looked like, I would read comments like, I've never heard anything like this before. It's not in a genre. And then my picture came out 6 months later. Now she's an R&B singer. I share certain sonic threads with classical music. My song Preface is like a hymn. So let's talk about that. If I were white and blonde and I went to church and said I went to church all the time, you'd be talking about the choral aspect. But you're not talking about that because I'm a mixed race girl from South London. So she was already contesting a bit of that. Also easy to forget, The Weeknd didn't show his face for the entirety of those first 3 mixtapes until he finally did a show. So there was a bit of a thing there of like, okay, we see what the internet does with preconceived notions. So let's take that aspect out of it and retain some of the mystery like artists used to have in the 70s if they didn't put their picture in the gatefold. The 2 other nuggets that were really like, oh, I didn't realize or I had forgotten were, one, 2014 specifically was the year when streaming overtook physical media sales, when those lines crossed, and the politics and the economics and the everything of that have a long tail that we now know all the consequences of that shit. But we were at the dawn of a new world that we didn't know what would be wrought. So the culture around music was changing, represented by that crossover moment. 2, I saw, I think, a TikTok the other day. I don't remember where I saw it, where somebody was like, what was the worst time for music? And they were like, well, I don't know, but look at the Billboard from 2014 and it would be a contender. So 2014 in pop music, like, I'm bringing this up because one, I just saw this recently and was like, wow, that's very specific time-wise. And 2, the reviews you read all either say explicitly or allude to this is different. It was like othering it from some perceived norm in some way, right? Positively, complimentarily, but was saying it's not. It was defining it by what it wasn't. So 2014 in pop, Pharrell's Happy, that fucking horrible thing. Katy Perry and Juicy J's Dark Horse. Taylor Swift's Shake It Off, the abomination of every Target superstore. Eminem and Rihanna's Monster. The Rise of Sam Smith. Meghan Trainor's All About That Bass. Uptown Funk. Florida Georgia Line. Luke Bryan. U2's iTunes Put It on Every Phone in Existence fiasco. So all that's happening in pop. Contrast that with, we think it was all gravy in the Obama era and shit got really dark 2016 on. 2014 was Ferguson. It was Michael Brown and Ferguson.
Yep.
It was a fucked up year. And what was happening in big glossy commercial, like let's sell you some nice flowery clothes moment just did not reflect the reality for a lot of people. So there was dissonance that was starting to bubble up between pop culture and counterculture in those moments. So I think somebody like Twigs is a natural outcropping. Like, we were ready for singular things like that. And, there were other things that, like, I don't know, the internet, the wisdom of the crowd can occasionally get it right. I think about, it was either 2011 or 2012, Tyler, the Creator on Fallon, little moments of like, how'd that sneak through the gates? How'd we let that happen? And Twigs, I think, would be considered pretty big now, culturally pervasive. Like, she has been in a movie and TV and certainly has a huge cult following. But like, the streaming sales crossover bit is really in sharp relief here because you read on her wiki LP1 debuted at number 16 on the UK albums chart, selling 4,051 copies in its first week. Debuted at number 30 in the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 10,370 copies. As of August 2015, a year later, the album had sold 77,000 copies in the United States. Great numbers. Paltry numbers compared to physical sales time. So it's at the very beginning of the era where we lose all grip on scale of an artist. That's now led to, hey, this artist can probably sell out stadiums. And yet on Ticketmaster, we have Blue Dot Fever. And I'm not saying that's at all a phenomenon with Twigs. I'm just saying there was a monoculture with the metrics of penetration, of success, of whatever for an artist. And that's just not reliable anymore. So like Twigs was maybe a bellwether for what was to come. But to answer your question, I don't think she was part of a wave of anything. I think there was a recognition of a sort of singularity with what she was bringing to the table. I remember feeling pretty distinctly like, oh, whoa, this is something different. And even, in fact, Sasha Frere-Jones, who I would put on the level, we talk about Robert Christgau all the time on this podcast, but Sasha Frere-Jones is like one of my favorite, most reliable musical minds. One of the few people who, if I truly am not sure how to feel or I want to expand into a challenging new direction, I'll just go seek out what he's been writing about. I can always count on at least an interesting thought from him, even if I don't ultimately agree with it. And even he didn't really know what to make of it. And he's like a guy known for his precision and finding the essence of a thing. But he said the sounds on the album span such a wide range that it's hard to know what to call any of it. So that gave me sympathy for the alternative R&B tag. As a person who hates genre labels, it's like, this is so expansive and so novel a combination. I gotta call it something because it's so many things. I don't want to risk it being nothing when it feels like it could be a lot or everything, you know?
Totally.
Language is fallible in that way.
I think maybe hitting specific tracks would be a helpful way to draw out not only surprising stuff on cold or cold start listen, but also, like we tend to talk about, things to focus on if they're there and sort of what to do on the other side of it. This one feels, to preview that last bit, as wide open as any music that we listen to. There are so many ways to get energized by what's happening here. And to the point of our discussion that we just had, if it feels like it only points in one direction, you're looking at it wrong.
Yeah,
for sure. I think starting kind of at the top, like I mentioned, your preface really started blowing me away when I put it in the right context, listened to it the right way, and heard aspects of it that I hadn't before. As soon as Lights On hit, two things, a simple thought and a less simple thought, occurred to me at the same time. One, a thing to listen for, and a thing that to me is like a wild card bit that changes so much about this record, even though it's a simple fact, is, oh, that's like an acoustic upright bass thing. And like, just the choice to do that in this scenario, in otherwise music that is attempting to be really expansive and spatial and have a lot of detail to it. I mean, bass in general is usually the checkbox area for a lot of people. We will pipe this through, one of 3 or 4 different tonal things. And otherwise, we're just going to like synth this out, sequence it, whatever. And then everything else is on top of that. And here, like, I love that you mentioned Mingus already. Like, in that very same sense, there is a a aliveness and quality to the bass in a lot of these songs that will change the quality of what you're listening to when you focus on it.
Yep.
And Lights Out was the very first moment where it's like, okay, this is going to give me a totally new kind of rubric for listening to the rest of this.
I agree so wholeheartedly. I don't think bass is the thing to focus on for me personally, but I was sitting and thinking, and I was like, there's so many reviews that describe it as like cold or icy. There's so much higher mid-range to treble stuff happening here. So much of the real action occupied is like in the higher end of the range. And I'm like, why does it work? And thinking about it didn't work as well on a little tiny speaker because only that stuff comes through. Low end is the part that makes this record work. It grounds it. It makes it more elemental. It makes it more physical feeling. I wrote that there's the exact right amount of low end and dynamics. In the same way that I noticed it with the instrumentation, I like it when the bass comes in after a minute or so in the song. I also like that in her vocal variety. Like Twigs often gets talked about for the like quiet, the breathy, the whispery, the very high end of her range. But I like it when it gets down more in the Aaliyah range and you're like, wow, holy shit, she can sing. Like the kind of more soul singing type of stuff versus the more choral, I guess, almost like operatic type stuff, or the breathy, the sort of like cursive adjacent singing. But yeah, low end is so important. I'm so glad you pointed that out.
The other simultaneous thought that's less, is this a pun? That's less bass, is this is the first moment on the record where lyrically she brings this ostensibly sexual bit. And like this really delights me, man. So much of this is obviously sexual on purpose and about bodies, and all that stuff is great. I find it hilarious that the first real song on the record has a hook, "When I Trust You, We Can Do It with the Lights On." And once again, just how she's like, FKA doesn't stand for anything. Those are just letters. Do not let yourself be fooled. She is also like, this, "we can do it," is a phrase that's just describing anything that we can do together, because when we are trusting each other in vulnerability, you can metaphorically have the lights on and be vulnerable with your partner. And it's like, okay, yes, I love that. I am 20% suspicious that you added that justification in later because it feels that way a little bit, but also I love that. Okay. I love the underlying message of that.
Brother, that's just right. That's like, right drunk, edit sober. That's all that is.
Yeah.
The insight came when it came.
But like the constant sort of intentional uneasiness of the sexual layer is, once I accepted it, hilarious in this record. Just like the whole treatment of things becomes, in a sense, funny at the same time that it becomes really serious to me. And that sort of allowed me to, from here on out, accept and understand the expression of a lot more of what was happening here.
Well, then you're gonna love this Cliff Seal ass quote that she had. On Preface, I sing a quote by a poet called Wyatt. Have you seen this from her Pitchfork interview?
No, Jerry Seinfeld. I have not seen this. I have not heard this.
What's the deal with FKA Twigs?
I know what you're referencing, but I don't know the quote.
On the opening song Preface, I sing a quote by a poet called Wyatt. "I love another, and thus I hate myself." It's inscribed into the vinyl. So it's called LP1, but for me, that quote is the subtitle. You could apply that line to anything in my life for the past 2 years. I love another, and thus I hate myself. Come on, Cliff.
I don't know what I am, but I'm certainly not that.
That's right.
Incredible energy. But then by the next track, 2 weeks, which became, a hit single on its own. You've sort of famously got the lyrics of "My thighs are apart for when you're ready to breathe in," and it's so directly sexual that, like, apparently in places they were editing out the word thighs.
Wow.
Which always feels strange that we have ever done that. Like, for all of history, it will be weird to me that we made versions of music where we were like, certain words we're going to make sound over this so you can't tell what it is. And it's always only one hop away from kids bopping the thing. So then anytime something ridiculous gets edited out, my brain goes to like, how could I rearrange this sentence to be allowed to play it as a children's song? And so that one gave me a lot of fun thinky time.
She does hip hop bravado so well. And it like doesn't really read as that until you read the lyrics of a song like 2 Weeks. Yeah. Higher Than a Motherfucker Dreaming of You As My Lover is, again, maybe kind of Grace Jones, but there's so much. That whole song, if you just read the lyrics on Genius, you're like, this is a rap song. It doesn't sound like one when you're listening to it, but like, this is a rap song, and that's tight. Also, how many songs have we covered where they name a specific tooth? Talking about incisors. And then rhyming something with incisor. Like, I love it. The body keeps the score.
Again, then rolling through some more songs as well. Like, so I kept then being surprised once I paid enough attention to the production depth, and Hours is another example of deceptively layered music that obscures itself if you're not listening in the right context or the right moments. And then to harken back to a bit of an earlier joke and reference here, I was in video mode when a Pendulum came on. And I just wrote a note to myself that I said, I can't say that watching the videos were really helping me with the vibe. And I'm not really sure how this is supposed to make me feel.
Amazing.
Thank you. That statement stands. My journal entry for this podcast about that song still makes sense to me now. I don't know what it is that it is expressing, but boy, is it expressive, especially in video form. Once I turned that back off, because that had officially distracted me completely, it mostly went back to just maybe being my favorite song on the whole record.
Pendulum?
Yeah. And specifically when I started noticing the little bits of sonic storytelling that they were doing. And in this one, the noticeable bit was how after enough repetitions towards the end of the song, it starts subtly distorting itself a little bit more over and over. And that whole concept of pendulum actually had a tactile feel to it. And like, that became the cycle that I would keep going through with these songs. And that was a big sort of moment on the first real attention paid to the full listen through. Is like, by that point, I was like, every song has something that I need to pay attention to. I now I trust the rest of the record in a way that only happens when you get enough upfront on one. You know, a slow burn is a little bit more of like, I don't know what I'm doing until this really shows up. And with this one, it felt like it pretty immediately started cresting from these really interesting moments. And then obviously Video Girl was kind of the top of the bell curve.
I do think that's a great observation. If you put on the record from preface and you do preface, lights on, 2 weeks, and you're like, I'm not sure, and you're about to pull the ripcord and turn the record off, come back to it and start at the midpoint. Start with Pendulum. Because the best textures on the record, for my money, are on Pendulum. The two things that grabbed me were the drums sounded like The Beautiful Ones by Prince. They had the same like sort of clap and reverb. And then the vocals were very vocodery in a way that reminded me, for like a millisecond, it would feel like Imogen Heap. And for a millisecond, it would feel like Black Moth Super Rainbow almost, where it would be like, you know, the sort of old PBS graphics of the like dragging rainbow trail type thing. It was very visual in my mind. So very textural. And I agree with you, when it starts to build up to distortion, which is a cool underrated move, like intentionally fucking up the dynamics and the build, or the quality, eroding the quality in the build, is a cool thing to do. I also, going back to Hours, that was the one that specifically made me laugh out loud thinking about talking about it on this podcast, because I was like, I can kiss you for hours, hearing that over and over, thinking about you like being out in nature, listening to that. Was like, well, we've been joking on the podcast about how much more comfortable Cliff is talking about intimacy and that sort of stuff. But that's just weirder. I mean, that is so much rawer than like Megan Thee Stallion type intimate talk. Like, here's just two friends talking about kissing for hours on the next episode of Tune Dig. It's like very vulnerably intimate. It's
Your
quite
point
a
is
thing.
well made, but I enjoy that that's the line you brought out, and not, who'd have thought I'd be here in your mouth.
But that's almost Mars Volta-y. That's got a surrealist quality to it, right? Like,
What's
picture
Spanish
Cedric
for
singing
I have
that.
spiders in my mouth. Yeah,
Exactly.
totally.
Exactly. That could be anything. It doesn't have to be, yeah. You could be a piece of candy. Also worth noting on Hours, like, there's a bit of a super groupie thing happening there. Like, she got Blood Orange, your favorite, Clams Casino,
Yep.
Emil Haney, who produced Adele's Hello, among a huge list of other enormous things. Emil is a huge producer. And Arca, who was like a formative collaborator early in Twigs's career and has gone on to have a very cool experimental arc and cult following and all that. Arca is somebody else very cool. But I was just surprised to see that many people deployed on that one thing. And for my money, like, not even one of the top 3 songs on this record. So it is Pendulum for you. That's your jam on this record?
I think so. I learned to appreciate other bits, but that's the one I keep coming back to for sure.
It's Numbers for me. The production grabbed me immediately. And I think it is worth noting that Twigs produced or co-produced every song on this record. That is one of the things that I was very surprised by. How do you come up with a sound like this? Normally with collaborators helping you form a sonic palette, so that like she had a hand in all of it, really shifted my view. But Numbers felt like, I wrote down, fractalized Aaliyah. But it's one of those examples of the vocals where I was talking about, like, it's a bit in the lower register. It's more present. It's more full. It's a bit Aaliyah. It's a bit Beth Gibbons. But you're like, man, she could really, I'd love a whole album of this type of thing on more straightforward production, but then it wouldn't be Twigs.
Was I just a number to you? Was I just a lonely girl to find tonight?
And similar to the distortion bit, There's a big synth swell on the back half of Numbers. But yeah, that's definitely my favorite song on the record.
That one has another good example of the simultaneous over-under thought happening here. I can appreciate the wordsmithiness of that song. First of all, even the fact that it's like ascending, the way that it stops, the way that the concept of being the number gets implied through all that's great, right? But she also noted, quote, that there's exaggerated breathing that disrupts the sentence, and in the liner notes for this record was just that disrupted pause was described as a sob. That is supposed to be read like if you were reading a poem or a stage play, I guess it would have brackets that says sobbing in between every line. And okay, I wasn't able to pull that out from the original source material. Not totally sure if that helps me go back to it in a different way or not, but it fits and it makes sense and it works and it speaks to the depth of I'm going to go really, really hard in the paint on whatever this one specific premise is here.
Yeah.
And just like Video Girl before it, there's a full sort of artistic commitment to this particular point that's being made. And this was another good example of the method I had for relating myself to Twigs. I couldn't say, honestly, that I've had a lot of times in my life where someone used me for my body. And I thought, am I just a number to you? And while I accept that as my plot in life, I found ways that her commitment to the bit, so to speak, in that thing still enabled me to connect to it. So no, I haven't felt this literal way, but that sense of, in a broader way, what are people doing? Can I not be sincere?
Yeah.
And you, Kyle, know better than almost anyone on planet Earth that's sort of my little perpetual gripe with all of reality in general. It's like the moment I try to be sincere, some shit clamps down on me in the worst way possible. And all I want is to be an unfettered, sincere person who also makes jokes all the time. And again, so being able to come back to the lyrics, tie together the music that's happening in it and in what the artistry is actually supposed to be through the production of the song, took a song that otherwise would have just been almost a skip level thing to me into now that's a hook I appreciate and love now. I can sing this for myself without feeling weird about it.
In the same way, I remember when we talked about Rihanna, you talking about the sex with me is so amazing hook. The last thing I would have expected you to say out loud on the podcast, but you never know what stuff is going to get its hooks in you. Truly.
It's true. Just wait till we get to Kicks.
Oh, I was like, Kicks Brooks of Brooks and Dunn? How's he figure into this?
Yeah, the podcast is just now 6 degrees from Brooks and Dunn.
I mean, truly, that has been one of my favorite parts of the body of work is seeing how different people are expressing the same universal ideas and what it reveals to me in the Rorschach test of my own life. And I take it as a little bit of a challenge every time we do one of these now. What's the most tangential connection that I can find between two of these artists? Because I think I use that word vessel for Twigs, but they are all vessels to express ideas and feelings that words can't get to. And Twigs is as prime as an example of that as anyone. So now not only do I want to see a Twigs Omar Rodriguez Lopez collaboration, I want to see a Twigs Brooks and Dunn. What does Twigs dancing to Neon Moon look like? Watch your broken dreams dance in and out of the beams of a neon moon is not a lyric that would be out of place on this record.
Totally.
The sentiment certainly is all over this record.
100%. Just with 2015 vibes instead of 90s cigarette smoke vibes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. 2015 UK rave out all night vibes.
Then right after Numbers is Closer, which once again gave me a surprising angle to understand. This one, though, was more direct and obvious. This is like a choral song. Like the arrangement of the vocals is very choral. And like, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Singing in a group of people who are good at singing is tight. It's really fun. Yes, you can sing. Well, actually, I'll say it this way. You can have fun singing terrible songs with people who are really good at singing.
Yeah, for sure.
It feels awesome. Now, there, may or may not be entertaining to experience on the other end of it, but like getting to do it is pretty rad. And this reminded me of the best moments when we would make really kind of anthemic bits in chorus music. We would really start building and layering and doing interesting things with each other's, different vocal registers and stuff. But then to me, speaking of spatial qualities in these songs, this one had a real visceral image to it where we're in a chorus supporting Twigs and she goes full Björk mode where it's like she starts singing with us and then it like increasingly devolves into something more ridiculous where it's like, wait a minute, where did she get Peter Frampton's talk box? What where did she get a bop it to make these sounds from? And just like it took on this quality of the end of King Giz shows where they're just like, hey, we found 63 synthesizing machines backstage and we put them on this table. We'll be doing this until you leave.
Right.
Like, and man, that song in particular just like really spread out for me and took on a fun quality there that helped me once again to appreciate that there is like an actual like diversity of musical approaches embedded in a really coherent vibe here. That like there's like extraordinarily different songs that still feel like they belong on the same record, and that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And once again, calls to Björk pretty specifically. Being able to build a little tiny world and then really live inside of it for a whole thing is really hard to do. And by the time I was sitting closer, I came to appreciate this particular aspect about this album.
We've laughed about it a couple of times, but the Corpus Christi carol on Grace being a like, what the fuck? But it wouldn't be Grace without the sort of off-speed pitch aspect of that. And Closer's got a bit of that. I was thinking that Closer would be interesting as an a cappella, as just the vocals, and it would be sort of an Enya type thing going on. But that beat is nuts. Could also sort of be a rap beat in the right hands. And it evoked some of the stranger stuff that I was getting into around that same time, like the Triangle Records stuff, like Haxon Cloak. And he's gone on to do like score work. It's a bit maybe Yeezus-y, just a touch, but it's more like that experimental sort of dark wave stuff in those percussion sounds. And I'd be remiss, one thing that I felt like we didn't talk about enough on the Sade episode was what a visionary she was in terms of all aspects of her presentation. Like Sade was an art student, and so the visuals and everything all went together. Twigs directed, I believe, the Pendulum video on this and was like a co-art director on the look of the record. But the thing that really got me was I mentioned earlier, she co-produced much of the album herself, but that she taught herself Ableton and like manipulating EQs to build a unique sonic palette. The thing that I was really like, whoa, was one of the techniques that she developed was generating synths entirely out of drum sounds, doing things like reversing, tuning, adding effects to hi-hats, and then playing those notes as percussion layers. But just like drums can be synths and vice versa. And so you get on a song like a Closer, you're like, is that a percussion? Is that a synth sound? Well, the answer in many cases is with Twigs' sonic palette, it's probably both. It's probably just a mutation of both, which I think is really, really cool.
I just want to draw out one thing you mentioned in passing. You mentioned a little bit of relation to maybe Jesus.
Yeah.
And there is such speaking of more like kind of endearing things. First of all, finding out that she's basically our age. So her like rubric,
a year younger than us, I think.
Yeah, but like close enough to where similar phenomena.
The specific area of millennial, like getting on the internet at the same time. Yeah.
So just telling this story will make a bunch of people listening activate and lock in immediately to a thing, and everyone else will have no frame of reference whatsoever. So Twigs talks in an interview about how like one of the most like motivating and sort of life-changing experiences for her was the College Dropout coming out, and then her getting Kanye tickets because she specifically wanted to go see Jesus Walks. And like Jesus Walks was a whole thing. There's like a whole cultural bomb that went off around that. And it didn't come with any of the baggage that we now have with that artist and all that. It was just, this song rips, this video rips, my whole life is about this now. It was everywhere and it was huge. But then the way that Kanye at that moment could then translate that hugeness, especially and specifically into those first touring moments, were like, there are probably 100, 500 stories like Twigs of like, I went to that Kanye West tour and my approach to music changed after that, because we did a whole episode on this, right? But like, this was when I would almost say, very cautiously threading this needle, at that moment, there was a purity to what Kanye seemed like he was doing that feels very similar to what Twigs was trying to do when writing this record. I am better than almost everyone who writes music.
Yeah.
And I am about to show you. The attitudes were totally different. The approaches might have been different, right? And, you know, the way that the music gets built was different in both of those cases. But the energy of, I have an ego that is so big, but then also you're one of the very few people on the planet where it's maybe calibrated correctly in the moment. So show us what you got.
Right.
Man, that really helped me once again connect to the energy of all this. I could also imagine a version of myself in the 2012 to 2014 timeframe where it's like, I have given myself to music and I no longer exist. You know?
So good.
And I love how much all of that timing lines up, because it really, those types of moments feel like they're never going to come back again because of the diluted nature of how we experience art and music now. And that was right to your point, like right at the end of when we switched over to streaming, and the nature of so many things changed. And, you know, it kind of became harder to release these singular cultural moments. And so it's cool to think about all that and think about this being a person who experienced the world in a really similar way, time-wise, to what we have. Obviously, her experiences are very different for a lot of reasons, but matching up time when we're usually doing time sequence comparisons in these episodes has been sort of a bit of a relief. Like both for this episode and the next one, like these are people that are about your time on Earth.
Yeah.
And we can maybe share a few frames of reference.
I really want to believe, so that's a great observation, but I really want to believe that you're wrong about it not happening again.
Cool. Yeah.
I
hope you're right.
in my logical brain feel like, yeah, he's right. It's so over. It's never been so over. And I was clamoring for examples like, well, what about Turnstile? What about Rosalia? But the scale at which those are happening in a room, getting lots of people in a room to do a thing, pales in comparison to the amount of people outside of the room who are also like feeling some resonance from it. But there is something about young people going to the movies. People under 35 are accounting for more than 50% of all movie theater visits in the past year. Physical media, not vinyl, not an in vogue media and whatever, CDs, tapes, just like physical media writ large is having a moment. In-person connection and community building of different kinds is experiencing little pockets of resurgence. We haven't figured it out culturally at scale, but there are a ton of signals to me that there is a desire, not necessarily get to monoculture, because I don't think we'll ever achieve it in the way we had it pre-internet. I'm not so foolish as to believe that will ever happen. Everything is telling me that in as much as there is still a collective consciousness amongst our species, there is a desire to share something, to revel in, that somebody like a Twigs or, God forbid, a Kanye West could could hold up their arm and pull down lightning from Mount Olympus and hand it to us mere mortals type of thing. And sorry to deify her again, but there is just something like sort of beyond explanation about her to me that I haven't really found the words to account for yet. What was that YouTube comment that I texted you earlier?
Nobody doing it like Twigs.
Nobody doing it like Twigs. I mean, at the very least, that's so true.
100%.
You know what I mean?
100%. Let me put a finer point on this one. Nobody doing it like Twigs. Let's talk about the song Kicks.
Let's do it.
So, as some sort of cosmic joke that I have foisted upon myself, the last song on this record is just about masturbation.
Depressive masturbation, to be specific.
Yep. Great stuff. Something I otherwise would have been like, well, this will at the very least be fun to talk to Kyle about.
Great stuff.
On this podcast that I choose to do. I did this to myself. And yet, not only is it fine, it's a fine song. All right. I found myself singing it. And it's really funny when you find yourself singing it, because I don't have all the parts that make all the lyrics make total sense. But nevertheless, it's a fun lyric to sing out loud. But it gave me, speaking of strange connections, it gave me my strangest connection, or what feels like one of my strangest connections. I mentioned this earlier, like something I observed throughout the record, and I would encourage people to like actively listen to this. We talked about how well the bass works, which is just sort of surprising when you consider how simplistic the approach is, but like it just works. And the production is harmonious. The levels and layers are so coordinated with one another that it reminded me of Converge. And specifically how in production, like one of the things we've talked about for a long time is I love Converge's production for a lot of reasons, but one of them is the vocals are like 15% lower in volume all the time. And it creates the wall of sound thing that creates the visceral feeling of what Converge actually sounds like. And like whether they're doing it to sound like they do live or not is sort of beside the point. It is true. Like that is a phenomenon that exists. And so in that same way, really on Kicks, the way that the beat is positioned in the mix, especially in the main like hook and chorus, it feels perfect. I really don't love to use like judgmenty words to talk about music, but like it feels like the right answer for everything that's layered in there in the production. And for that to be true, not only in your most in-depth listening experiences, but also when you're listening to it on a thing that makes it sound like shit, it still works. And that, man, by the time I got to the end of this and was having this sort of funny moment of like lyrics I laugh at the most combined with music that I respect the most happening at the same time, I don't know if I am turned on or not. Like, I don't know. How do I feel in any sense after listening to this? And like, I don't have a good answer, but I do know that it feels a little bit like the constantly shifting nature of how she describes all the music. It's just like, well, I don't know. It's not this, it's that. Don't think too much. It's not this. Those words don't mean this. It means this other thing. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm maybe something else. I don't know. I'll see who I become. I'm like, man, to end up on the other side of a record like this, which is not otherwise some sort of linear conceptual record about any of that stuff, to feel like I actually made through a narrative journey and ended up in a place where I understood someone better was really surprising to me, even as a person who listens to a lot of fucking music and kind of expects to be able to understand people better at the other end of it. This feels like every now and then you get to interview somebody at work, and you get the rare occasion where someone's interview vibe actually matches up with the person that they end up being after you hire.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Because like most people don't, right? They're going to oversell, and then we get whatever's left of you once you show up. But to be able to have like the presentation and the substance align so incredibly. And once again, for this being the first full-length record from this artist at all, is pretty awe-inspiring. Encourages me to go back to whatever it was she was doing in 2012 to 2014 and thinking about like, do I need to reevaluate the way that I put myself into things? And is there something else that I could be doing that, like we talked about, in 10 or 15 years is going to feel so obvious? Everyone's always been doing this. Why weren't you doing this already? It's like this really opened me up to that way of thinking about things. And I didn't expect to be hopeful about the current reality in any number of ways, but this gave me a foil for it a little bit. It doesn't actually make me hopeful, but makes me curious. And I'll take that.
And what you've just described is a beautiful illustration of what we were sort of half joking about at the beginning. At the end of this, it just felt like art, like capital A art. Wow, I got arted on this one. That's what it is. Like you're like, I can't describe the way it makes me feel quite yet, but it really makes me feel. And I feel seen, even though this has nothing to do with me. You know, you just feel profoundly connected to the human experience. Like you could feel more yourself, more alive. It does all of those things because it's such an embodiment of who she is. And we've never seen anybody quite like her. And so in trying to unpack her journey over the course of the record of exploring and sort of trying to assert who she is and isn't, you're doing that unconsciously, subconsciously for your own self. And so that's my sort of earnest thought. But my other one that you really sent me down a rabbit hole once you mentioned Converge was what Converge song titles could be about masturbation. Wrong answers only. I Can Tell You About Pain. You Fail Me. Aimless Arrow. The Saddest Day. Bitter and Then Some. Love Is Not Enough. Sadness Comes Home.
Jesus Christ.
Tender Abuse.
Dark Horse. Yeah.
First Light, Last Light.
Black Cloud.
When Forever Comes Crashing. Viscera of Men from Blood Moon.
Oh my God.
To Feel Something.
As usual, you and I have found complementary inverse directions. I'm over here trying to like be serious and heavy about my sexuality. And Kyle is like, what if we played a name game with song titles? Tight, dude. It opened us both up in fun ways. Just like really stretched out our hips for different reasons. You can hear all of our bones and muscles popping around and cracking. And
But the older I get, the more I realize that's what it actually is, right? It's not
Yeah.
about like being good at a thing. It's about feeling totally safe and comfortable in your own
Yes.
body, which is like the whole point
Yes.
of this record. You're the most yourself when you're like, yep, this is the vessel that I'm in and I'm with it. I'm doing it. I'm going to move it around throughout this time and space.
Yes.
And that's not a thing that I've ever looked for or asked for from music, even though I've long said that my favorite line in all of music was from Whiskey Rock and Roller by Leonard Skinner. I don't care for fancy music if your shoes can't shuffle around. This is a really elegant, elevated album devoted to just that and sort of philosophically interrogating on some level what that means. So the country boy in me really appreciates and can relate to that a lot.
Honestly, the Leonard Skinner thing is really especially apt to me because maybe we'll end up discussing this one day, but like that was a band who was adjacent to and often wrongfully associated with like racism.
Yeah.
They were not in fucking Antifa, but they were also like, no, that ain't it.
Okay, do you want to start a band that is Antifa Skinner though? Because I would be very into that.
Yes, in some sense, is that not what you and I are doing every day of our lives?
We are the Bo and Luke Duke.
That's same. Well, I don't know too much of who I am, but I'm definitely not that. Like, man, that energy has some really interesting places in music, and I think again that's a cool and apt connection to just people who are spiritually complementary to this way of making art and trying to be self-expressive in a way that is both genuine and positive as much as possible.
Yeah.
The goal of this is not to be a role model for women, as far as I know, but there's no reason it can't be that way. And there's no reason you can't borrow confidence and curiosity about yourself and your body and everything else that I think this record can bring up for you if you let it. And
I mean, it not just for women, it was for all people. One of my favorite Twigs stories is they interviewed T-Pain for something, and he talked about being in a rut in the music industry. And he said, Twigs actually changed my whole perspective on the music industry. She made me proud of myself again, the way she was talking to me. I told her I wanted to do some stuff like videos and putting out some songs, but I was like, I can't. And she was like, why? I was like, the label and stuff like that. She was like, why? Do they control you? How are they controlling you? What, are they going to sue you? Because that's their money too. She opened my eyes. I felt like I was brainwashed, and she came and reset me. Like, why am I not putting out songs? Why am I not doing this? Because every time I see her, there's a new video, a new song. I'm like, your label's okay with that? And she's like, I don't give a fuck about that. It changed my life, the way she looked at things. And I tell her every time I talk to her, she changed my life. She is amazing. And look at T-Pain now.
Two other quotes from her, I think, help drive that home. And then I want to make sure we touch on any next steps from here. I have lots of ideas and none of them at the same time, which was fun.
Kind of same, yeah.
Yeah. But kind of extending out the energy from that T-Pain interaction. One of the things she said that also hopefully connects to some of the things I've been trying to express so far. She said, quote, "Weird things can be sexy. Vulnerability is the strongest state to be in. How boring would it be if we were constantly dominant or constantly submissive?" Once again, okay, I fuck with that. What you just said, 1000%.
Yeah, man.
Not only that weird can be sexy, like, yes, for sure, dude. Not only is that cool and true, but also vulnerability is that state that you want to be in where the weirdness is okay. I agree that it's the strongest state to be in when you are vulnerable. And like, that's already a whole lot. But then this idea of like, how boring would it be if I was constantly dominant or constantly submissive? I don't know. Everybody's probably got their yin and yang. Me and Kyle are yin and yang in many senses in this way. Myself and my life partner are yin and yang in this sense in many ways. But I think the secret weapon of the whole thing is, and I think you would agree with this directly, Kyle, even if I am one of these normally, but I know how to be the other.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's, man, like that's how you build intimacy through vulnerability with another human being. Is like, yeah, other people know me as this, but you get to know me as this. And this only comes out in the situations where it's, yeah, safe, obviously. But after a while, the personality that you only share in an intimate setting or with people really close to you, after a while, once again, like that becomes your weird, sexy thing.
Yeah.
Dude, that's the strangest parts about you, and I love you. And I'm vulnerable because I don't mind dragging this out into the light now when I'm around you.
You turn the lights on it.
Exactly. Now we got the lights on and we can do whatever weird shit it is that we want to do consensually together, because it doesn't feel weird anymore. Like we're just going to look straight into each other's eyes, like literally and metaphorically. Man, that's cool. Like that frees me up maybe even more than a prince or somebody who at times feel intimidatingly sexual all the time. And like, this is a reminder, actually, you're sort of a generic mess, and that's cool about you. And like, dig into that. The other thing she says, which I think maps really well to how I'm able to appreciate whatever level of seriousness she has about music. In a separate setting, she says, that is why music matters to me, because you can explain things and like, okay, this is a whole quote. She sort of is using millennial speak, so follow me, okay? She says, and that's why music matters to me, because you can explain things in like a rise of something, or whether that's clarinets or violins or something that's beautifully programmed, or even just like space. Even just a certain beat and then just space. This transcends language. It's a universal emotional activation that it doesn't matter where you're from. You get what someone's explaining to you, and that's why music matters to me. Well, damn, I fuck with this too.
Wow.
Yeah, the idea that there is a universal emotional activation that allows me to understand what you're saying and explaining to me. We've found 1,000 ways to describe the cosmic magic of music, and that's a pretty good one that should be added to the portfolio.
Man, that's really beautiful. And to be so young in the grand scheme of things, our age, but now almost 20 years of making music full time, she's got a pretty good handle on how to. It's one thing to have those ideas and to know that those things are true, but to be able to execute them,
yes,
in a way that resonates with people is like pretty spectacular. Where do you go from here?
So I can take the first easy route, and I can kind of use that quote. So that whole thing of like, I am able to communicate the universal language of music to other people at scale, like in large crowds, in albums, in visual media. Like, I can do all of it, and I can command excellence in it. So we've mentioned these a few times, but like, Björk is an immediate place to go to energetically here in all of her many prolific projects throughout the years. Like, almost all of them fit the vibe of sort of what's being done here energetically. Like, I will explode who I am out into public, and will do so with such precision that you can accept or deny me, but like, this is me. And a ton of Björk's projects come to mind for sure. But then I also think you mentioned Rosalia earlier. That was like the immediate when I started thinking, okay, I can go back in time a little bit to this record, but what would a 2026 version of this be? It's that. It's exactly that album where it's like, in order to express myself artistically, I will be singing in other languages that I must now learn. And like, not just that project exists, but that there is a human being on earth who committed themselves to that level of thing. And then it squeaked through the wall and became a massive thing that other people came to appreciate. That was a place my brain immediately went, because honestly, I'm still surprised that something so artistic and complex got so much notoriety in the last year. And I'm very stoked for it. So I'm hopeful that, to your point, maybe we can continue to find new versions of big cultural moments like that album. that would hit, but it continues to be pretty rare to me. And so I appreciate it when it's there. On kind of like moving down the totem pole of like complete artistic vision into just like slightly more specific vibes, but that get done with precision. You know, speaking of things that are not my vibe, but the Lily Allen record and her performances this year are in the vein of this. There's a whole bunch of internet commentary about like, I finally got to see Lily Allen and she only played for the length of her record, and just extremely British shit, man. She's like, yeah, that is because that is how long my record is. And I told her I would be playing my record. And like, I love how European that is in general. But again, the commitment to the specific artistic expression. And in her case, that's a vibe I don't want to feel, but it's very like, this is what a terrible breakup feels like. Here it is, sit inside of it and squirm for 40 minutes. And then on an even lighter level, that to me doesn't carry that level of seriousness or commitment to a specific emotional bit, but has the expressiveness that once again reminded me of Joanna Newsom, the harpist who can paint worlds with a few strings and her voice, but just the precision of, I only have these two instruments at my disposal, so here is what I'll do with them, and they will work in perfect harmony. Like, hopefully I'm sort of visually in those different artists I mentioned there, like I'm cutting across a depth or a concentration of artistry is different across each of them. But I think that that's helpful to discern, because like that way you can match up with kind of how you're feeling. And in that sense, you know, this record sits for me closer to the homogenic side of things than it would Joanna Newsom side of things. Like, I think from here on out, if I'm putting on this record, to your comment about like resetting stuff, like I have a time and a place where I listen to that Björk record and other Björk albums a lot now. Like, I think this record's going to end up finding a place, maybe even a literal place in my life. And if not, maybe a time of year where I want to deploy it.
That's so rad.
If it helps, a very small smattering of other people that kind of popped up for me vibe wise. I think it's like less of an academic exercise at this point, and more just like, here are some folks that it sounds like that. But like we mentioned earlier, like, so SZA and like SOS is to me very, very similar to this for all the reasons I mentioned before, but like that one gets deployed as well. That one puts me in.
You really like that record.
Yes.
A lot. Yeah.
Yes.
That's cool.
Another one that's sort of spiritually similar, but has a different place in my life would be Channel Orange, which we've talked about plenty. But like, there's a lot of Frank Ocean overlap here.
This record's more like Blonde, but there's definitely a Frank. Did I remember reading that she has a pet that she named Solo? Or am I thinking of somebody else? There's definitely a spiritual connection to Frank Ocean in there.
And then a few other pretty quick and easy ones, but just first of all, we sort of mentioned earlier the sort of ability to switch in and out of sexuality and sensualness in general. If you take that a little bit more on the like, let's take 80% Twigs and maybe 20% Tim Robinson, and we can get Doja Cat, who is occasionally what?
I love Doja Cat so much.
Yeah, me too.
So much. Just even if she never made music, Doja Cat on TikTok is incredible.
But yeah,
that new song with Lotto is great.
Totally.
By the way. Yeah.
So that's sort of the thing I mean. It's like, man, as an artist, she's someone who's like, oh no, I can do the really good stuff if I want to. I just may not feel like it today. Like, oh, okay.
It was so clear with the video that was like, okay, I'm sick of you guys talking about me like chutting myself up or whatever. Like, I'm hot, bro.
Right.
I'm hot, and I can also rap. And so any other stupid incel shit that you guys have to say, could you please just stop for a minute, because I'm great.
Yep. Otherwise, just folks who are in the similar ecosystem to me, Summer Walker's stuff I've enjoyed a lot,
Oh,
and sort
yeah.
of spiritually reminds me of this. Always got to promote somebody from Atlanta if we can. And then, but then also like things that should be fairly obvious from here. Doechii, Kate Bush, Caroline Polachek. There's a lot of stuff that's just right, really close around here, but that, at least for me, like I would hit my concentration of that sort of music really soon
Yeah.
if I tried to listen to too many of those records at one time. But nevertheless, good and important artists. And Tim's is another one, I think. Somebody just like really pushing
Tim's
in,
like TEMS
Yeah,
of
yeah,
Nigeria.
yeah, in taking what should ostensibly be a pretty simple genre or approach or whatever, and bringing in one just like really well done angle on it that other folks haven't done before. But all those things being said, you know, that's sort of my full list here. A lot of times listening to these motivate us to go out and listen to other ones. This is one of the few that a little bit like Odetta record in the sense that I get to the end and I just kind of go, I think I'm just gonna be quiet for a minute.
Yeah.
and
That's
and
real.
let it simmer and let that whole thing reverberate for a bit.
That's real. Or like go to Willie's Roadhouse on Sirius XM. Just like a totally different thing that I can in fact put on quietly in the background and not think about. Not
Decide-
be in my body for a minute.
The DirecTV rock music station. Yeah.
Whatever music choice channel is on where I'm picking up my hot wings with the little logo bouncing around like a DVD logo on the TV. Oh, it's playing
made it as a
Margaritaville.
wise man.
Oh my god! Didn't speaking of Doja Cat, was it her that she did the Cheetos ad with Nickelback?
Oh my god!
Did I
have no
hallucinate
idea.
that? Did I Mandela effect that entirely? Hold on, that's a thing,
What a
right?
ridiculous sentence.
Nickelback, Doja Cat. Is that a thing? Nickelback, Cheetos ad. Megan the Stallion
Yeah. Okay.
did Flamin' Hot Dill Pickle Cheetos ad.
All right. That maps.
Wow, what a challenge for my last 3 remaining brain cells that was. Nickelback just completely threw me off.
I'm sorry about that.
I'm kind of a defender. That's fine. Okay, for me, I would start with the close orbit bit and then move outward. I was really fascinated with the time and place of like weird, sort of experimental, sort of almost industrial at times, extremely unique, like alternative
Yeah.
female artists. So like I think Arca is amazing.
Yeah.
I think Sophie was really singular. I continue to this day to love that Vince Staples quote where he was like, Sophie was always on some gangsta shit in the studio. And like, if you started to get too emotional rapping over her beats, she'd be like in a full leather outfit, making beats and not talking to anybody. And you'd go in the booth and you'd start rapping. And if it got too emotional, she would turn the whole shit off and leave the studio until you got it together and got back on some gangsta shit. And just like Vince Staples and Sophie working together, it's just delightful. But there is that uniquely starting in the 2010s phenomenon of rap and weird stuff coming together, like rap getting more experimental as a genre. You alluded to cloud rap, but I love Twigs's relationship with rap overtly and abstractly. It's well documented at this point on the podcast that's, if it's not my favorite kind of music, it's one of them. But like, she just put out a song a couple of weeks ago with Yachty, and it's one of the more interesting Yachty performances I've ever seen. And then they had this cool video that's shot between Atlanta and London, and it kind of reminded me of the J-Lo and Ja Rule I'm Real video in the way they're just kind of like out on the streets together, but it's like a cool A24 almost version of that. And it's a great song. And it's just like, wow, she can kind of do anything because she's so steezy in that. And she's got on like cool big sunglasses. So it doesn't have to be like ballet, classical music, Twigs. She can do
steezy is the best word of the episode. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
she's very steezy. She can be cool in so many different ways. She can deploy her coolness in lots of ways. And when you watch some of this early stuff with her, she's not the type of person that would strike me as confident, but she's obviously extraordinarily confident to make some of the risky decisions that she does. But maybe it's just the Johnny Cash, like, this is what I know. Why would it be any other way but this? This is me. She's worked with Young Lean. She did that interview with Cardi. But my favorite hip hop Twigs moment is she directed the video for a song she was in with A$AP Rocky called Fuck Sleep. And it's a sick video. And it's from Testing, which is like, Rocky has always been kind of flirting with the high art, whatever experimental type of stuff, but Testing was, he really went gangbusters with textural, structurally experimental type of stuff. And so Fuck Sleep is a tight song and it's a very cool video. And she's very steezy in that in a different way. Rocky is, I wouldn't go so far as to call him a male Twigs. He's not nearly that experimental, but he brings a flavor to rap, especially in his insane videos. A$AP Rocky, for my money, has had the best music videos of the past 10, 15 years, for sure. So that's a really cool collaboration that I like a lot.
Thank you. Not to throw you off, but this is making me feel better for bringing him up earlier. This is sort of what I meant. Yeah, he's not the full 100% pure artist all the time, but like, he was trying some stuff.
He doesn't get enough credit for how arty he is. Yeah. And like really, really worldly he is in his reference points and original ideas and stuff. A couple of the like concentric circle close artists, closer otherwise artists, I'm fascinated by this horse girl artist that she like wears the horse prosthetics and does kind of hyper pop. I'm still trying to find the center of we'll find what's at the center of that, but I love that it exists. I mean, Charlie XCX here coming out with music, fashion, and film, like yet another era. They're so different as artists, but they're always going for it and staying true to themselves.
Yeah.
I would put Twigs and Charlie in that same cat. Like I fucking love Charlie XCX. There are artists like Cobra, Tommy Genesis, Slater that are all doing different versions of like, it's going to be something different every time. I think Chelsea Wolfe is somebody you could bring up, is like sonically very different, but I mean, imagine like Chelsea Wolfe and FKA Twigs playing an opera house bill together.
Yeah.
I would pay multiple hundreds of dollars.
Your description of seeing Twigs at Terminal West was exactly my experience seeing her at Terminal West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I forgot about
the people
that
were slightly less horny and sexy. But otherwise, exactly the same experience.
Yeah, a little more alienated vibe in the room that evening. Yeah.
Yes.
Like people stuck in a coal mine together. Hushed whispers. But both artists that I would describe as like profound with incredible voices that you want to be quiet to hear. I mean, I thought a lot about film scores. I brought up the Hacks and Cloak earlier, but I was thinking about like the Obsession film score or the Backrooms score and some of the synthier weird stuff and how streaming has given scores kind of a new cachet.
Yeah.
Mandy being another one. There's all kinds of them out there. Like if you don't want to listen to more albums, you could go listen to non-classical, non-Hans Zimmer, more synth-oriented scores, of which there have been a ton over the past 20 years. That could be a cool direction to go. I also thought about Hiro Murai after watching a bunch of her videos. He directed one of her videos. In fact, his first music thing he directed after This Is America was her video for Sad Day. So watching Hiro Murai shows like obviously Atlanta, but also Widow's Bay being the most recent one could give you a bit of the vibe of really going for it art-wise. There was something about that new James Blake record. Like James Blake just kind of kept coming up as an artist sonically. I don't think there's a lot that relates to them otherwise, other than like really going for their own thing and being vocal about their vulnerabilities, like his stuff in his love life with his partner, but also his stuff as like an artist in the music business and fighting for freedom and autonomy, just like really recognizing themselves as a voice and trying to be that for other people. I saw them as related in that way. And then there's all that other stuff like Nicholas Jar and experimental and ambient. Son of Ra is not in the vein of, but I was like, I just want somebody to curate a bunch of cool stuff for an art gallery, like Nicholas Jar, Marina Abramovich. You know, Twigs just makes me want to go to an art gallery and just experience art.
Yeah.
In all of its, be in a physical space and just watching beauty happen, which I guess kind of goes back to Charlie with music, fashion, and film. Like I just listening to Twigs makes me want to be where it's at, you know, be in the room where it's happening, to not only experience beauty myself in my own body, but to experience other people experiencing that beauty, which I guess I kind of did at Terminal West, but I wasn't obviously not prepared for it that evening. older, hopefully wiser me is more prepared for it now.
I feel confident that you are. I think one good way to leave this, I might tee you up for a quote that I think you mentioned to me, but if I'm going to embrace the curiosity that this record artfully expresses and invites me into, I guess, I think one cool way to be curious about it is kind of regardless of what comes next, whatever Twigs is doing will be interesting.
Yeah.
And it seems like, you know, if we're using our logic here, if she was a thing of excellence as a dancer, and then she let us know, hey, inside of me, there are at least two wolves. Surprise. and now she's become this artist in that amount of time. It seems just as likely. Is there a third wolf in here? Is the largesse and approach to art going to result in something different coming from somebody who was capable of so much to begin with, and then slowly refined to more and more, and now plugging both of those things together? So many of the artists that we talk about are either dead ends in themselves because they dead, or because because it immediately points you in another direction and you're otherwise entertained. But like, I think there's maybe something interesting, not only generically, but specifically about Twigs and where she might go from here.
Yeah, there's a definite sense of watch this space. The third wolf for sure is acting.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's right. She was in a movie with Anne Hathaway.
Yes.
Oh shit.
She was in The Crow, a TV version of The Crow with Bill Skarsgård, and now earlier this year was in Mother Mary with Anne Hathaway. And they asked her at a talkback for that film about some of her favorite artists, and she described the through line of those artists being world builders. And she mentioned David Bowie, she mentioned Kate Bush, like you invoked. And she said, you look back through their whole career and you think, wow, they almost invented a feeling that had never been described before. And I think so much of what we've talked about has been her doing kind of exactly that on this record. And her most recent record, Eusexua, came from her time shooting The Crow and being back out, going to UK clubs, being out all night, like in her physical body in a physical space. And I also learned in one of the write-ups talking about those things, like there's tons of other stuff that she's done. This interviewer said, in our interview alone, I learned that she did voice work for a cat commercial, worked as a wedding singer, and even starred on an English TV program as a kid akin to the Mickey Mouse Club. But they said, it's up to Twigs when she shares those facets of her personality with the world. For now, acting is finally front and center. But you were alluding to this, the quote that I shared with you that I thought was really interesting to me is, she said, one day I'd love to do something where I can just leave it all on the stage, as we say, push my different crafts to their maximum for an incredible project. She said, to do that, I'll probably have to make my own. And my thought to you was, Well, man, I certainly hope she does.
Go to tunedig.com for your chance to win a free vinyl copy of the album we just covered. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter for even more info about the album, including playlists, links to interesting articles and videos, and even some stories that didn't make the episode. Most importantly, though, please support your favorite local record store or concert venue, or buy merch from a band you love. Thanks for listening.